Pablo, which is the room camera? What did you name it? Mr. Littlefield, can you read your message, please?
Microphone test. 1, 2, 3, 4. Microphone test.
do roll call and see who is here from my colleagues. Ms. Carrillo? Here. How are you, Ms. Carrillo? Our first in-person meeting after COVID, so. Yes, here. Ms. Limon? Here. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mancha?
Present.
Thank you. Mr. Moreno?
President.
Thank you. Ms. Ortiz? Here. Thank you very much. So we do have a quorum. Mr. Soto, would you let us know who is joining us from Cabinet this afternoon, please?
Yes, Madam Chair. Tonight, we have Assistant Superintendent for Business, Mr. Richard Hernandez.
Here.
Assistant Superintendent for Curriculum Instruction, Melissa Casey.
Here.
Executive Director of Human Resources, Dr. Salinas.
Here.
Executive Director of Operations, Mr. Kyle Blickman.
Here.
Our Public Information Officer, Mariana Veraza.
Here. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. We do have Dr. Judy Castleberry here with us also. Good afternoon, Dr. Castleberry. Before we go any further, I do want to relay a message. Commissioner Rebecca Clay Flores reached out to me, her staff did, and they wanted to say a big thank you to our district and our administration for helping them put the word out there of those COVID vaccines that she so generously gave to our community. And she said if it wasn't for your district, we wouldn't have been able to be so successful. So I'm relaying the message to administration. So thank you very much on behalf of Commissioner Clay Flores. Agenda item number 2, the board will conduct a public hearing regarding the proposed incentive for early notice of resignation. Public item number 3. I'm sorry, agenda item number 3, public comment, my apologies. We have one, okay, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair, at this time, I want to have Dr. Salinas present our public hearing.
Dr. Salinas, I'm going to interrupt you. I want to apologize. This is my first in-person meeting since I've been board president. And even though this was the norm, Zoom became my norm. And so I'm very kind of a little all over the place. So my apologies to administration, to my colleagues, and to the community of Harlandale. I will get this done. I will get it done. So my apologies, first of all. Thank you so much. Dr. Salinas, thank you for allowing me to say that.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Can everyone see the screen? I believe board members have it in their board book. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak tonight. For our public hearing, we have a public hearing for early resignation incentive. This is pursuant to Texas Local Government Code, section 180.007. We're having a public hearing so that, let me see if I can get this out of the way. Sorry. Public hearing will be held concerning payments to be made to eligible employees in excess of contractual amounts who participate in a proposed incentive for early notice of resignation. As you're aware, Texas Education Code does allow educators employed under a probationary term or continuing contract to provide notice of resignation without penalty at any time for up to 45 days before the first day of instruction. For this year, that resignation date is July 2nd, 2021. This early resignation incentive, This early resignation incentive would allow additional time to plan staffing for the 21-22 school year. Harlandale ISD would like to offer a one-time incentive to eligible professional employees as well as eligible campus, satellite, and central office paraprofessionals for their early notice of resignation retirement. Eligibility. Professionals and employees who meet the following requirements are eligible for the incentive. All professional staff currently under contract. Professional staff means employees under a Chapter 21 or non-Chapter 21 written employment contract. And then all paraprofessionals, employees who meet the following requirements would be eligible for the incentive. Campus-based instructional and administrative paraprofessionals, satellite-based paraprofessionals, and all central office-based paraprofessionals. The incentive would not be available to professionals or paraprofessionals who have resigned already or submitted paperwork for resignation or retirement before April 19th. People or any employee who resigns effective immediately, any employee who resigns in lieu of termination, and any employee who does not work until their last contract day. The amount a full-time professional or paraprofessional employee whose resignation is found to meet the requirements would receive a $500 incentive included in his or her final paycheck for 2021 school year. The incentive payment would be subject to all legally required deductions. Contingency. Eligibility for an incentive payment is contingent upon the employee maintaining his or her employment and satisfactorily completing his or her assigned contract work schedule through the effective date of the resignation at the end of the 2021 school year. Resignations accepted under the early resignation incentive plan would not be eligible for rehire for the 21-22 school year unless the entire monetary incentive of $500 is refunded back to Harlandale ISD. The process that would take place is we have a public hearing today. We're asking the board to consider it for approval. If it's approved, there would be an early resignation incentive. It would start tomorrow, April 21st through May 7th. Employees would hand deliver the signed and dated letter of resignation or retirement and the completed early resignation incentive form to Human Resources by 4 p.m. on May 7th. The superintendent would then approve the resignations and or retirement letters, and then the eligible employees would receive their incentive of $500 in their last paycheck. Thank you. I will, if there are any questions or comments.
Madam Chair? Yes, sir.
I have a question. I have a couple of questions. What was the reasoning? I don't remember this happening last year or the year before. Did it?
No, ma'am, it did not. We considered it last year, but then with COVID, we decided not to do that because we didn't know where we were going to be. We didn't know as staff-wise what we needed. So this year, we're doing it just to see for staffing purposes for next year, so that we can get that early versus July 2nd, because people can wait until July 2nd, but as you know, we're going to be starting earlier next year, and so we wanted to make sure our staffing plan was in place ahead of time.
I have one last question. Is this a typical incentive that you might see throughout the city, county, state?
So different school districts offer different incentives at different times based on their needs, yes, and typically it's about $500 is what we've seen being offered.
Thank you.
Anybody else, comments or questions?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead.
A motion. I know, in speaking, briefly on the matter last year, I know the idea was being considered really just to provide an avenue for our superintendent to potentially be able to hire some people or get them the opportunity to decide versus waiting. I think that's always been kind of a dilemma here within Harlandale is we do have some people that are potentially waiting and say, hey, you know what, I'm still here, I got this position, but potentially I can get a counselor position or an EP position. Here it's kind of, and then also those that are kind of floundering, deciding, am I going to retire? Am I not going to retire? Do I really need to? This is just kind of an avenue, a tool that our superintendent can utilize to entice people to make a decision that will be in the betterment of our community versus potentially, hindering us from being able to hire staff. And not only that, but also to be able to look at the needs of our community or our district. Sorry, I'm used to saying community right now. So the needs of our district, because in terms of utilization and support, I know a lot of times we're kind of given that short end of the stick when we get it at the last minute. And I don't know if Mr. Soto would kind of want to provide a little bit more insight on the rationale, because I think it's a tool that he mentioned even during the time when he was looking to become superintendent, and as a way to provide us the best candidates possible.
Madam Chair.
Yes, of course.
You're correct, Mr. Moreno, as stated by Dr. Salinas, it is for staffing purposes, and us getting pushed back for somebody that has a contract all the way to July. We're starting school earlier this year, which is also on the agenda. We're trying to get a jump start on staffing for next year.
Madam Chair? Yes, ma'am. So I understand we're starting early, but how is it going to be effective for the following year? Is the schedule going to be, I know the schedule is going to be out of whack right now because of the COVID and starting. How about next year? We still next school year? Are we gonna be starting early, or just gonna go back to the regular schedule? And this is gonna happen again, or how's that?
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir, of course.
could you answer that?
What's related to the need for, to have notice in the county?
But I guess, Ms. Limon, are you asking for not this coming school year, but the following school year? Right. At the end of every year, we are going to assess. Throughout the year, we're going to be assessing on how this is working for our intercessional county. And we reevaluate, we evaluate, we turn back and see what is working and what is not working, and then we tweak as we go. So we will see, we'll play by ear for the following school year.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Ms. Ortiz.
I'm sorry, Dr. Salinas. So is this going to be a 1-for-1? So if we get a resignation, then we're immediately able to offer up, or is that?
So not necessarily, it depends on the campus and their staffing needs.
Thank you.
Well, if it's one thing that COVID has made us do, is to be prepared. And I think planning is always a plus, you know, have a backup plan for the backup plan. And certainly the better prepared we are, the better we can provide for our community, our students and our teachers. So I do appreciate thinking ahead and thinking outside the box. So thank you. Any other questions or comments?
No, Madam Chair, at this point, are we able to make a motion? Okay, I'll go ahead and make the motion I move to approve the proposals in up for early notice of resignation.
I'm sorry. Yeah, actually, if I may, yeah, this is, there's a.
Oh, there's also opportunity for people to speak.
Well, right, this is
Yeah,
for public hearing.
That's right, because we're gonna put it out there and we're gonna
So
allow.
I'll
the
rescind
community-
what I just said.
Okay, and,
Say
and,
it, say it.
and just for clarification, the reason we have to have a public hearing is there's a law that if you're gonna pay a contract employee anything above and beyond the contract value or amount that they're supposed to get paid, you're supposed to have a public hearing to show that it serves a public purpose, and public purpose is for planning purposes. The item, I think it's further down on item 7C is the actual item to approve the resolution adopting the resignation notice plan. So this is, if any citizens have any comments or concerns, this was their opportunity to express it.
Okay,
And then we just go to regular public comments, and when this item comes up, that's when y'all can make a motion and have further discussion if you want. And the reason to put it up here is because, well, this is when you normally have public comments, so we thought let's just put it at the top.
you're trying to confuse us there.
It means it's just a little bit different that required a little bit of explanation, that's all. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you for letting us know. Okay, so then I'm gonna jump over, if nobody else has any comments or questions, I'm gonna jump over to agenda item number 3. That's public comment. We do have one community member that has signed up for public comment. That's Mr. Salcido. Mr. Salcido, good afternoon. Are you available?
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Salcido. Good afternoon, sir. Thank you for signing up for public comment. We appreciate it. Just a friendly reminder, public comment topics addressed shall be limited to those specifically included on the board's agenda and/or district related. 3 minutes, please, Mr. Salcido. I will let you know when you're almost close to those 3 minutes. Give me 1 second, sir, while I get the timer going. Give me 1 second. Okay, Mr. Salcido, go ahead.
Good evening, board members. I wish we would have had this meeting open instead of Zoom, since the schools are opened already. Can y'all hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Very clear.
Yes, ma'am. Because I've been seeing that this district is actually wasting a lot of our taxpayer money out of our community, and we don't share that to the public or to the community. You know, I know that there's a board elections coming up. You know, and some of them are running and saying, you know, we're here for the kids. You know, but lately, really, have y'all been here for the kids? You know, we had a lawsuit go to our school district, you know, and attorneys that we had, Sanchez and Wilson back then, you know, they kept just appealing and appealing and appealing, you know, knowing that it was a cause that was lost. And we kept paying them and paying them and paying them. And in the long run, the district lost, and they lost millions. Did the money come out of the board's money, out of y'all's pocket, or did it come out of the kids' pocket? Just think about it. Because of y'all's decision that just kept appealing and appealing and appealing. And now I hear that there's another one going to federal court. Another case going to federal court. Why can't it be settled between the board members? Is he in the clique that y'all just don't want to let him go? And y'all are gonna waste more taxpayer money? I believe they should hire their own attorneys instead of wasting our taxpayer money. So why don't y'all go out there and say, I'm running for the school board, but yet I have wasted some of y'all's money and I don't have no answers. Because we asked and y'all just like, we don't know, I don't know, I don't know. You know, it's like sometimes when somebody does something, we always use a attaboys. You know, you do something good, you always want to pat yourself. But what about when we do something bad? That never comes out. And I think wasting our taxpayer money is something bad that y'all are doing.
Sir?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Did you mute me?
Yes, sir. Thank you so much.
Do I continue or?
I'll give you the 8 seconds. If you weren't able to hear me, can I do that, Mr. Lopez? Okay, give me 1 second, Mr. Salcido. You have 8 seconds left. Let me get that timer going. I don't know that I can do 8 seconds. Oh, yes, I can. Give me 1 second. Just learn something right now. Okay, Mr. Salcido, 8 seconds, sir, okay?
Okay. It's so sad that somebody muted me because they didn't want to hear the truth. Thank you. Hopefully y'all open up the meetings to the public so we can go out there and speak because y'all say y'all are here for the community.
Thank you, Mr. Salcido. I appreciate that. Thank you for coming and signing up for public comment. Thank you, sir. Moving on to agenda item number 4, announcements.
Good evening, everybody. We're going to start with the Pledge of Allegiance, so if we can please stand up. The Pledge of Allegiance will be by Ericiana Isabel Mendoza. She is the granddaughter of our late board member, C. Mendoza. Sorry, we're having some technical difficulties.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United
If you turn off those speakers, they can.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Una bandera de Texas, te prometo tratar así Texas, un estado bajo Dios, indivisible.
Okay, the next thing, my next announcement. So I turn off my mute. Okay, so my next announcement is the Ken's recognition of Michelle Bogus. She was the all-star student. She's a student at STEM High School. She actually does it all. She's a track athlete. She's bilingual, and so she was chosen as a Ken's 5 all-star student. Her name is Michelle Bogus. There, that's right. So again, Michelle Bogus, she was chosen as a Ken's 5 all-star student. So congratulations, Michelle. I would also like to report the percentage of in-person students at campuses. We have 55.8%. That's about 2,000 more students on campus than they were in January. Also, the percentage of students that attended testing last week, 4th grade was at 94%, 7th grade was at 88%, and our high school students was at 80%. Now I'm going to share our retirees for the month. Sylvia Garcia, she's the CN manager at Harlandale Middle School with 24 years of service. We also have Louis Luna. Teacher at Stonewall Flanders Elementary with 31 years of service. So thank you. I would also like to share our graduation dates for this year. We have Frank Tejeda Academy will be May 25th at 8:30 a.m. at Memorial Stadium. STEM High School, also May 25th at 7 p.m. here at Memorial Stadium. McCollum High School will be June 1st, 7 p.m. at the Alamo Dome. And Harlandale High School will be June 2nd, 7 p.m. at the Alamo Dome. For more information, you can visit harlandale.net and click on the graduation banner, and all the information about tickets and all the COVID protocols are on our website. So now we have the fine arts and athletics announcements. Girls basketball, Cassia Sandoval was named the San Antonio Express News 5A All-Area Team, so congratulations to her. Juan Rosas, Harlandale High School, shot put area champion. Danielle Resendiz in both the 800-meter run and 1600-meter run. Carlindale High School was a regional qualifier. Vivian Salazar and Tony Salazar won the District 28-5-8 mixed doubles championship in tennis. Josh Hauser, that was McCollum High School. Josh Hauser and Jason Peña qualified for district by winning second place, also in tennis, McCollum High School. Joshua Juarez from McCollum High School qualified for regionals in golf. For McCollum High School girls track regional qualifiers, in the 4x100-meter relay, fourth place, Jabria Maya, Dominique Guerra, Carisma Ibarra, Dacia Gonzalez. 4x200-meter relay, third place, Kylie Dominguez, Caitlin Iduarri, Jabria Maya, Dacia Gonzalez. 4x400-meter relay, second place, Dominique Guerra, Carisma Ibarra, Angeli Sanchez, Michelle Bogus. 400-meter run, second place, Michelle Bogus. And 300-meter hurdles, first place, Maya Carrillo. McCollum boys track regional qualifiers, 4x200-meter relay, Shan Tejeda, Ruben Pacheco, Gary Escobar, and Christian Ramirez. And then Carlindale High School varsity and non-varsity bands winning sweepstakes at UIL concert and sight reading. So congratulations to them. McCollum High School UIL one-act play competed in the regional contest, vying for a place in the state finals. They ultimately did not make it, but worked very hard to get that spot. So congratulations to them.
Big round of applause to all of our retirees. Thank you for your loyalty and your years of service. Oh, you have some more?
I do.
I'm jumping the gun. I will be better next time, I promise. I'm just excited about all the good things happening in Harlandale.
The Harlandale Middle School band won sweepstakes at UIL concerts and sight reading. And then I would also like to show you two videos about the HEP drive.
They're all for now.
ISD family. First of all, I would like to thank all of you who donated to our HEP drive. As you know, the Harlandale Education Foundation allows us to be able to support our Harlandale ISD graduates with scholarships so they can continue their education. I know this has been tough, and I am beyond grateful to see that even despite the challenges we all have faced, you still came through and made this the most successful HEP drive yet. Together, we were able to raise $75,216.98. From last year. I am beyond grateful, proud to be part of the amazing family that truly believes in supporting our students. Many of our campuses had 100% participation. Now it is time to announce the schools and departments that raised the most money. From our elementary school, Adams raised $5,696.68. Marnell will raise $7,055. Our traditional high school, McCollum, raised $6,900 when it goes. Our traditional high schools, STEM raised $1,615. And from our departments, large department, special education with a whopping $5,086. The superintendent's office raised $702. We will match dollar by dollar the amount that was raised, bringing our grand total to $150,433. Continue our mission of educating our students and helping them succeed in their future. This has never been more true. We are stronger together and closer than ever.
it's just amazing to see that people just think of others, and that's what we need at a time like this.
My name is Andrea Guerra.
My name is Thomas Fajardo. Lucas Alvarado. My name is Jeffrey Martinez.
So I am actually a proud member of this community, graduated from Martindale High School. Graduated from McCollum High School in 2008, graduated from McCollum High School in 2005. I graduated high school from McCollum High School in 2004.
So I graduated from Martindale High School in 2010.
Columbia High, Cleo Middle School, and Martindale High School.
The HEF scholarship created an opportunity for me to go to school. It really gave me motivation to go to college and to finish because I knew that this scholarship was given to me by people in my community, and I wanted to make sure that their money was put to use.
It actually showed me that I could get scholarships. I wasn't sure if I wanted to go to college when I was graduating, and I wasn't sure if anyone would even give me a scholarship. So when I got the HEF scholarship, it showed me that there is money out there is opportunities.
My English teacher, who was all my English teacher all 4 years from McCollum High School, Mrs. Sharp, she told me there was a scholarship, and she said you can work for that scholarship and more. And she said, as long as you do, the recommended diploma, take all the classes you can. And I was like, yes.
It was very helpful, especially with my family at the time where I was a first generation college student and we didn't have money to pay for tuition, so every little bit helped. I wanted to become a teacher, so that knowing that teachers also invested in me, that was really important. But it helped me to continue my education. I was able, when I graduated, I went to SAC for the first semester before I transferred over, so it was able to, use it for books or tuition, whatever I needed.
When you talk to the individuals who have benefited from the scholarship, the fact that they're coming back on campus, so like we have 9, like you mentioned, and so even though there's various roles and responsibilities on campus, they still have that direct contact and the impact with the students, and because they were a part of it, it's really easy for our students to see that they can also benefit from it eventually, even though we're in middle school and they won't maybe see this money for 4 or 5 more years down the line. But I think just the fact that our staff has that background and follow up on, I think that definitely impacts our campus in a positive way.
Every year when that HEF drive comes back out, it's okay, my chance to give back. So not only are we serving our students and we're giving back to them directly, this is something that they don't realize that we're doing behind the scenes. And so I explained to those schoolers this year, like, what are y'all doing? Why are you giving out this stuff to the teachers? It's because when y'all graduate, y'all are gonna get a scholarship. Why the teachers give us money? Yeah, so y'all are gonna get that eventually. So it's a little bit for them to look forward to.
It feels nice to take all the blessings and opportunities that I was given and give them back.
I love being able to come back to this community and give back to this community.
It's very humbling to come back and give back to it all again.
I just kept hearing everybody donating every single day, and I gotta donate myself. This helped me out. I want to help out future generations, and it was just amazing. And
that shows how much teachers really care about their students.
Every bit that helps, but the most they can do is they give the teachers going to make somebody else's passes. So it's worth investment. It's worth donating to. A continued effort from our staff to impact our students in a positive way, even though we know that we're going to turn them over to the high school, but we need to establish those things that we want, and then we can just continue following what we're doing and just know that what we're doing is definitely impact them later on down the line.
This is an amazing community that we need them to do their best and show the world that we can do a lot, even though we're hard-to graduates.
at the end of the school year, you're gonna see the graduations, and you're gonna know those students are gonna reap the benefits that I put the effort into.
And just to finish, I wanted to mention the bus wraps and the bus shelter pictures. I'm sure you have seen them around the community. So if you haven't, we have 12 bus shelters around Harlandale and 18 buses that have been wrapped with different pictures of different sorry, students and with different purposes. So we have one that's a family together, one that's focused on bilingual, and one that focuses on the different programs within our district. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Mariana. Can I go now?
Yes, sorry.
Thank you, Ms. Mariana, I appreciate it. So I jumped the gun, obviously, on my little congratulations and thank you to everybody. So does anybody want to say something, comment?
Yeah, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, yes, sir, please.
So I kind of just relate to this too. I know we did a special last year in regards to people that benefited from the HEF scholarships. I did benefit from the HEF scholarship. And so it's always wonderful to see that, that initiative to pay it forward. As an educator, we sometimes, trust me, the kids know when payday is. And so they're definitely going to utilize this for fundraisers, candygrams, anything you can think of, in addition to United Way, HEF. And it's just, it's fantastic to see that I did share, every time I see Mr. Adams, thank you for providing that avenue for us, because it's something that's, it's much needed. And it's just great. People talk about progress. We're going from 25, 35, from 75 to $150,000. That's real progress. And people negate that. And for some reason, they overlook all the others. But it gave me an opportunity, and it gave countless others opportunities. And so I'm just grateful that we're able to pay it forward continuously. So, kudos to all those that participated. Hopefully they get those gene passes, right? So thank you, sir, and thank you, ma'am.
I'll piggyback off of Mr. Moreno. My son was a recipient last year. And as a parent, thank you, Harlandale, because every little bit helps. Every little bit helps. So I'm a very grateful and thankful parent of the HEF Foundation. Anyone else? Okay, so agenda item, are those all the announcements, Mr. Soto? Okay. Agenda item number 5, information and reports.
Madam Chair
Yes, ma'am.
and my fellow board members, the time use tracker on Lone Star Governance for student outcome minutes. The board will track its time invested during public authorized meetings. On visions and goals for student outcomes, we have 24 minutes. For other topic meetings, we had 22. On progress and accountability, we had 36. On systems and processes, we had 51 other topic minutes. The total on student outcome minutes was 60, and the total for other topic minutes was 164 for 224 minutes total. And so that comes out to 26.8% of student outcome minutes.
And what meeting was that, Ms. Ortiz?
It is the March 15th, 2021.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments on time we spent student outcome our last meeting? We will get a lot better. We're doing good, we're doing good. Agenda item 5B.
Yes, Madam Chair, at this time I'll have Ms. Casey and her team, which is going to be zoomed in by Mr. Littlefield.
Good evening, ladies of the board, ladies and gentlemen of the board, superintendent and cabinet. This is a somewhat surreal experience, I'll just have you know. I am staring at a blank wall. I'm here tonight to talk to you about the College Ready Performance Factor. The percentage of students who meet college ready in both reading and math on TSI, SAT, ACT, or college prep courses will increase from 28% to 50% by 2025. And you'll see that we have it segmented by year, with the current goal being 28, and then following with 30%. So when we talk about college ready, the first thing that we automatically think about is SAT and ACT. So this graph demonstrates the percentage of students who are at or above the criterion for being college ready on the SAT or ACT. The gray is what the state is, and the gold is what the district is. You'll see that there is a minor decrease from 15% down to 13%, but it has not been dramatically impacted by COVID. The impact that we're going to see from COVID will actually show up here in a minute. But in terms of overall performance on SAT and ACT, our students who were getting it done are still getting it done. It's broken down by campus so that you can get a better idea of how it breaks down for each of the groups. You'll notice that Harlandale High School is remaining fairly steady. McCollum High School did see a sharp increase in the graduating class of 2021, and STEM maintains its numbers as it does throughout the years. So the next question becomes, what if a student didn't meet the college ready performance level on their SAT or ACT? Traditionally, SAT and ACT were used as part of the admissions process. This particular year, the majority of large universities as well as community colleges have waived looking at SAT and ACT scores. Instead, they're focusing more on alternative performances. So they are looking at things such as a child's score in their English classes, how they performed on their Algebra 2 courses. And they also look at something that is referred to as TSI. The state of Texas requires all incoming college students to take the TSI before they can register for classes if they did not become exempt through the SAT or ACT. So since only 15% of our students are becoming exempt through the SAT, then we do have a fair number of students taking the TSI. I thought it was worth mentioning how the TSI works. TSI, which in January actually evolved into TSIA2, is a series of 2 tests now. The first one is a reading and writing test. On that, students take 30 multiple choice questions and they type in an essay. Now, what's interesting about the essay is that as soon as they hit enter, the essay is instantaneously graded and the students are given their overall performance. If the student did not meet the performance criteria, then they continue on their journey on the test and take an additional 48 questions, which attempts to isolate the skills that the student needs assistance with. Mathematics works pretty much the same way. A student takes an initial set of 20 questions, and then if they meet the criteria, then the test is over. But if they don't, then they activate the diagnostic, which is a 48 item question bank, once again, to isolate where students need help and where they don't. All of this gets uploaded into a student portal that a student has access to, and that's the learning resources. There's free customized online learning supports for students not reaching the college and career readiness benchmarks. So how do we do? Well, here we are compared to the state. And again, the state is in gray and HISD is in gold. And you'll notice that we outperformed the state when it comes to TSI meeting the performance level in both subjects. If we actually isolated how we compare with TSI just simply on the reading portion, and the gain is actually much more dramatic. It's the math portion that's still causing us a little bit of problem on the TSI. So that is one area in which we'll be putting in our focus. You'll also notice that once we get past the class of 2019, the class of 2020, who have already graduated, and now the class of 2021 have seen dramatic decreases. The majority of this is because we have tested less. TSI is a test that is given basically on demand. It does not require a specific testing date. All it does require, though, is that a student be in a certified testing lab and take the test. There are procedures in place that allow a student to test remotely, and that is something that STEM Early College High School has experimented with, but it is extremely time consuming as well as manpower consuming. So this dip that you see is primarily caused by the fact that we weren't able to test nearly as many students as we could have. So we'll see the breakdown by campus. And as you can see, each of the campuses took a relative hit for the class of 2021. So then we combine it all together. And it is the combination of those two previous tests that builds the performance level indicator. We went back an additional year on this one. All the previous graphs went back to 2017. This one, we took it back to 2016 to help sort of round out what the story is telling us. You'll notice that there was a considerable gap back in 2016. And by the time that we hit 2019, we had virtually eliminated the gap between the state performance and the district performance. The class of 2020 did see a slight decrease, but as you can see, the class of 2021, we're currently sitting only at 22% of our students meeting one of the indicators to be college ready. And then again, we broke it down in terms of campuses so that you can get a better idea of how the numbers come about. So the question becomes then, so what's next? One of the things that we're putting into place for next year is the College Board pretty much owns now the name Pre-AP. And if you want to be in a Pre-AP class, it has to go through the same rigorous process for being accepted as an AP class goes through. There aren't many Pre-AP classes from the College Board up and running, but these are the ones that we will be taking advantage of next year. We'll be introducing Algebra 1 Pre-AP. We'll be introducing a Pre-AP Social Studies for the freshmen, where they will actually earn a World History Pre-AP credit in the fall, and then they'll follow it with an additional credit of Pre-AP World Geography in the spring. We'll also be incorporating English 1 Pre-AP with the plans of having English 2 Pre-AP in the next school year. And then a geometry pre-AP, which incorporates some of the strands of statistics. The pre-AP framework provides students access to grade level and enrichment in core courses to build foundations in math and reading. Now, as I mentioned, the TSI changed from a TSI test to a TSI-2 test. There were some fundamental changes in the types of questions that they're asking. So we need to continue to explore TSI intervention and train our teachers in terms of what is being tested. TSI itself is a relatively new test. So if you are slightly seasoned, like myself, then you may not have ever taken a math or ELAR test, so you don't necessarily know what's on it. We also need to research self-paced online TSI interventions. And we are continuing to work with UTSA and the Alamo Community College to build and strengthen the college prep math and college prep ELA courses at both HHS and MHS. Mr. Noverto Gonzalez is our CCMR coordinator. He wasn't able to be here tonight, but he is the keeper of most of this information. And so if you have any questions or if you want to dig a little bit deeper into it, here is his contact information. Thank you. Are there any questions at this time?
Any questions? Mr. Moreno?
Yes, ma'am. I know this has always been like a huge component that I've been kind of staying focused on CCMR. And I appreciate that, Mr. Lefort, you presenting the data for us. Obviously, as you guys have seen with TSI, it always just relates to me with money, because the less likely they're to take remedial classes, the more likely they are to save cash and save money and be ready to take on to the next level. Because I know I struggle with math, as it's historically stated throughout Orlando. But I think that's a state thing, not just a Harvard thing. But you know, the idea is really saving on that, going from 24 to 44% or 42%, I mean, that's dramatic. And that's a lot of cost savings to our families. I do like the approach that's being kind of utilized. I know when I didn't really know about the TSI A2 that was being provided, because I did take the TSIP or the FIA or one of those. And I know how frustrating it can be when you have a certain SAT or SAT score, and then it all varies. So I know one thing too that we've been working on, Mr. Littlefield, and hopefully maybe you can provide some insight into it as well, is I know a lot of our universities and community colleges, they have different requirements. Can we make sure, or do you know how we're going to align them? I know a lot of times just to communicate that to our families so that they know that there are students who won't necessarily need to have to take remedial classes or take any classes that aren't really aligned with their pathway. I know that's kind of an important question that you guys have been on for the last couple of years, but I know with the regression that we've seen because of the lack of testing and the data that we have, that's potentially a pitfall that some markets could fall into. So I don't know if you have any safeguards into that you guys didn't mention, Mr. Littlefield.
Yes, you bring up a very good point about the remediation classes. And, what a lot of the bigger colleges, as well as the ACCD, have done is they've started developing what they call co-requisite courses, where you may not necessarily be ready for college algebra, but you'll still take college algebra, and then attached to it will be basically a mandatory tutoring session that you have to attend. So the colleges themselves realize sort of the predicament that we've been in, and they've started building in safeguards, because they themselves do not want to necessarily spend all their staff on teaching the most basic of the courses. Instead, they'd rather, college algebra serves as a gateway course to the rest of the degree. And so they'd really rather have the students, accomplish that and move on and finish and graduate on time.
Any other questions or comments from my colleagues? Okay. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you for that presentation. We are now moving on to agenda item 5C.
Yes, ma'am. When we did our survey for the last 9 weeks, we were trying to bring our attendance, our in-person attendance up. And in the matter of us ordering plexiglasses when this first COVID hit during the summer of 2020, we ordered enough plexiglasses for all student desks. We didn't take into account cafeterias. So when the students returned, we ended up moving some of the plexiglasses from the students' classrooms because we were less than 50%. So we had extra plexiglasses to move to cafeterias, to gymnasiums, to hallways, to libraries, to labs. And so when we pulled out the survey and we were trying to bring up our attendance over 50%, we saw that we didn't want to pluck them away from the cafeterias because we still needed them there. And so we ended up having to order more plexiglasses to cover all the classrooms for the children. And I believe, Mr. Blakely, correct me if I'm wrong, we were going to do at least 22 plexiglasses per classroom.
Yes, sir.
And so that's the order that we filled. And I ended up using the resolution that was passed during the COVID, I believe it was in March, to purchase these purchases, and I'm looking forward to them.
Thank you, Mr. Soto. I have a question. The quantity that you purchased, do we have is it to the exact that we need, or was there a little bit more wiggle room?
Mr. Blakely?
There's a little wiggle room.
Okay, good. Thank you. Any questions or comments from my colleagues?
Madam Chair, I guess the only thing is once we get back to some sort of normalcy, how are we going to utilize that's the one question I think everybody asks. Because in my district, we don't have this. And, and we're bringing more and more students back. So, how are we going to utilize it?
I think our staff enjoys it, Mr. Moreno. I think it gives them a self of safety precautionary measure.
Yeah,
I
just
believe
worry
our
about
mask is another thing that I don't believe it's ever gonna go away. I can be wrong, but I see us using it even for the spread of the common cold. You know, so I believe we'll keep them intact as long as we can. Again, now the damage, now you start seeing some damages, kind of like our laptops and to replace them. So we'll play by ear by then, but we'll keep them in uses as long as we can.
I mean, I just worry about, day to day and normal wear and tear. And fortunately, once we bring everybody back, we are gonna have some students that see it as an opportunity to kind of mess with or distract themselves with. So I just want to make sure that we have some things in place and give the authority to the principal to have some discretion on that. Yes, sir.
Anybody else, comments or questions? Nope, okay. Moving on to consent items, agenda item 6, consent items.
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
I move to approve consent items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, and J.
Is there a motion? I'm sorry, a second?
I don't mind seconding, but is there something that we can just, I know it was presented, but the item, D, just to clarify, so the committee is aware of how we're approaching it. Is there a way that we can, Mr. Representatives, are we able just to motion for all of them to discuss, to approve and discuss, or do I have to specifically pull out that one again?
No, you could just discuss that and just have a question for clarification.
Okay, so I move to approve and discuss, or a second to approve and discuss. And the question is really just related to, and I don't know if anyone has anything else. It's really just to clarify, because I know last year there was a little uproar whenever we did the act for the designation as a year-round system. But Mr. Soto, if you could just kind of clarify, and this is just a situational one, we're not going to be a district of innovation, and we're not going to be, it's something that we can come back to next year to decide, like you said, assess and evaluate what we need based on the needs of our kids.
Yes, sir, Mr. Moreno. We need the board's approval for a year-round designation for us to put our intersessional calendar in place. And as you stated, the intersessional calendar will have a week in October for some interventions, some enrichment opportunities for our children. And then we come back in March and have another week for some intervention and enrichment for our children. And it gives us an earlier start date. And so this is why we're asking the board to designate us as year-round school. It's not necessarily saying that we are going school year-round, if that makes sense.
It does, because when I saw that, I was like, what do you mean every day, all year long? So I did appreciate you educating me prior to the meeting about what that meant, Mr. Soto. Mr. Manchin, you wanted to say something? No. Oh, any other comments, Mr. Moreno, or any of my colleagues?
No, mine, it's just, I know the basis as was construed last year and us going forward with it, it was really just to be able to, we always have the summer slide. Now we obviously have the COVID slide. So that's something that we need to meet the needs of our kids and the deficiencies that they're exhibiting. And especially when we're going to have some kids coming back in August that have been without formal instruction in almost 18, 19 months. So I'm kind of curious to see how we can assimilate them back into the environment that is, structured and without virtual instruction. So hopefully we can do it well. Thank you.
Anybody else? Any other comment or questions for my colleagues?
Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Soto, do we have a plan for our first grade teachers that are going to be bringing in kids that have not really had pre-K or K in school period, that are all of a sudden going to be pushed into being in a classroom setting?
That definitely is going to be a challenge, sir. That is why we're providing professional development. CNI is going to be working on professional development for our teachers, for those children that haven't had pre-K3 and pre-K4, that the foundation to have these kids be a little more successful. So definitely we will have a plan for kindergarten, first grade teachers.
Any other questions? I'm gonna piggyback on what Mr. Mancha said. It's not, in my opinion, it's not even just being in a classroom setting for the learning, but it's the learning what it means to be in a classroom setting for those little ones when they haven't had it. I think that kind of goes hand in hand. And they will need all the help that our teachers can provide so that we can get them back to where they're going to learn how to be a great student from a very, very early age. So thank you for that. So if there's no more other questions or comments, I'm going to move forward with the vote. Ms. Carrillo, yes, I'm sorry, yay or nay? I remember, yay or nay to approve consent items, and give me a second. Consent items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J. Yay or nay? Yay. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay? Yes. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Ms. Limon, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you. And myself, yay. So agenda item 6, consent items A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J passes.
Madam Chair, one thing real quick.
Yes, sir.
I forgot to give kudos to Mr. Soto for Super Bowl Monday. I know we had discussed that in
Yes.
respect, so I think that's a good day that hopefully people won't be listening.
We will all be grateful. Agenda item 7, individual items. 7A, consider and take appropriate action on a resolution authorizing the issuance of the district's limited maintenance tax notes, Series 2021, making provision for the payment thereof by the annual levy of the district's maintenance and operations ad valorem taxes, providing the terms and conditions of said notes and resolving other matters incident and relating to the foregoing. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion, ma'am. I move to approve as, to take appropriate action on that resolution authorizing the issuance of the district's limited maintenance tax notes.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Mr. Carrillo. I'm going to go ahead and take the vote. Oh, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, of course, yes. Excuse me. Hold on, 71.
The resolution, but the highlights are on 71 to page 73.
Is everybody on page 71? Mr. Hernandez? Oh, not yet?
That one?
Mr. Hernandez?
Madam Chair, I'm gonna start the dialogue. As we know, legislation is in session. There's a lot of unknowns about our stimulus money, our ESSER 2 and ESSER 3. And in January, so we can backtrack, January 21st, 2020, the board had approved for us to have some expenditures on some needs assessment that we needed on some facilities. Some of them were the Gillette project that had already been approved, but it was coming out of our general fund. Our auditoriums at Macon and Horndale, and then the parking lot and lighting at the stadium. The amount that we were going to use was about 26 million, and 13 was coming out of our general fund. Looking at the times that we have been in, and we've had some expenditures with COVID-related items, expecting to get reimbursed on some of those items, didn't come to fruition as of yet. We're still hoping and praying that they do release those funds to us. But we want to plan ahead, and worst case scenario, we don't get funded, and we have the general fund healthy. So we're trying to be creative and not use the whole entire $13 million of the general fund, and use about 1.6 of these maintenance of the general fund if we go the route of using maintenance tax notes. So if you see on your first sheet, it kind of breaks down to you the priority one that I just spoke about, the facilities assessment. The second part of the facility assessment was unfunded. We did present it to the board at the time, which was an estimated about $10 million for some lighting, some parking lots, and several schools, the police department's parking lot, the radio system that the police department needed upgrade, and then the finishing off of the stadium project. The thing with the maintenance tax notes is you cannot change the footprint. We cannot use any of that money if you change the footprint of the project. So the stadium parking lot, as presented to the board with some renderings, is we're going to move the soccer field from the west part of the stadium to the east part, so we can have more home parking on the home side. That being said, we're changing the footprint, and so we would not be able to use our maintenance tax notes. So instead of using our maintenance tax notes, again, we would use some of the other funds that we had and offset it. So maintenance tax notes would be able to cover those other projects that were not changing the footprint. Basically, if you look on the first page, the funding that we were going to use was the remaining bond funds, which was 1.5 million, close to 1.6 million. The settlement funds of Train, which was 8 million. The Gillette Foundation that we still have is about 3.2 million. And then the general fund balance was going to be about 13 million. That's the original proposed method of how we were going to budget, pay for these items, was a 26 million. The way, if the board approves going through the maintenance tax notes, it's on the second page. So we go to the second page, it tells us that we use maintenance tax notes of 22 million, the remaining bond funds of 1.6 million, the settlement train funds at 8 million, the Gillette Foundation at 3.2, and the general fund balance would be 1.6. So the majority of that fund balance of 13 million will stay intact, just in case we don't get any of just in case for a rainy day. Mr. Hernandez, do you want to add anything on that?
Yes, sir. And one of the important things about the maintenance tax note is that should the board decide to go out for a bond election, these maintenance tax notes could be included as a refund. And so what that does is what we've done in the past when we moved over debt that we've had on the general fund side over to the debt service side. And that's where we get the support from the state of them paying 65% of our borrowing costs, which is the principal and the interest. So it's like when you do a regular bond issue, we always get 65% support from the state, and we use those proceeds for our construction. This is a way of, as Mr. Soto said, reserving our fund balance and still giving us the opportunity that should we decide to go for a bond issue, include this in the refund and have the state support the paying of these maintenance tax notes.
Thank you, Mr. Hernandez. Ms. Ortiz, did you have any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, and I can reiterate or reemphasize. I know we discussed that matter, I think in a couple of incarnations in terms of meetings. Previously, I know that was the one kind of route that we were looking at taking and being able to provide that. But I also remember, I thought it was a little bit larger number that we were looking at it at that time, because we were looking at the capacity that we have, right? So I think now because of the timing, it's changed to where it just goes back to the 65%.
Yeah, as of right now, these are only for 36, but our bond capacity, when we go, and Mr. Hernandez can jump in, the bond capacity we're looking at was closer to 50 million.
That's correct, but the percentage, I believe that's what you're referring to.
Yeah, the percentage that we would be refunded.
Yes, and so that changes based on our student enrollment, and we see some declining in it, and our property value. So again, it gets adjusted by the amount that we're making up with actual property taxes collected versus the enrollment in our property values.
But I know that's the way it was mentioned and the way it was explained and presented was, it's a good tool to utilize in order to get the little needs that we need, or the more things we need to address currently, and kind of and do it in a way that's not just patchwork, but actually full-on renovations or full-on actual work done. So I think that's something that we can still hopefully be able to utilize.
Thank you, sir. Any comments or questions for my colleagues?
Excuse me. Yes, Mr. Hernandez, how much time do we have in order to potentially get a refund? The bond election cycle would mean what? We have to do it in 5 years, in 3 years, or in order to?
I'm sorry. No, ma'am, there's no particular timeline. We can hold bond elections on November and in May. So the next time we could hold bond election would be this November, or it could be next May 2022, or the November after that.
But we would be getting these tax notes issued immediately.
Oh, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Any other questions?
And I know just to kind of feedback, because they kind of triggered a part of a memory. So thank you, Ms. Ortiz. Yeah, I know when we initially looked at it, we were looking at it in like till where we're approaching the November ballot for a bond, not a huge capacity, but to address these financing. So, and I think it was noted, as Mr. Hernandez mentioned, that it can be kind of at any point. So just the amount of refinancing would be kind of differing, as he mentioned, based on our student enrollment and our capacity and things like that. But I think we'd have the ability at any point, right?
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. Anybody else? I will then move forward with the vote. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Limon, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Carrillo, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you. And myself, yay. So that is agenda item, somebody please. 7A. Yes, 7A, thank you, thank you. Passes. Thank you. Agenda item 7B, announce the required continuing education credits for each sitting board member. Under the State Board of Education rule, completing required continuing education each year of service is a basic obligation and expectation of any sitting board member. As board president, I am required to announce the name of each member who has completed the required continuing education, has exceeded the required continuing education, and is deficient in meeting the required continuing education. The requirements for training are measured as of the first anniversary of the date of the trustee's election or appointment, or 2-year anniversary of his or her previous training as applicable. There are 7 training areas for board member continuing education. 1, local district orientation. 2, orientation to the Texas Education Code. 3, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. 4, team building. 5, additional continuing education. 6, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. 7, identifying and reporting abuse, traffic, and other maltreatment of children. To the extent applicable to each board member, I will announce the completion or deficiency as the required training. For members who still have time remaining to complete required training, I will announce those board members who have scheduled timely training and those who have not yet scheduled the training. At the conclusion of this announcement, I will announce any board members training in excess of continuing education required. Level 1, local district orientation, not applicable because none of us are new board members. Level 2, orientation to the Texas Education Code, not applicable because none of us are new board members. Level 3, post-legislative update to the Texas Education Code. Christine Carrillo, Norma Cavazos, Elizabeth Limon, Juan Mancha, Ricardo Moreno, Elaine Ortiz. All have completed the required continuing education. Level 4, team building training with all the board members and superintendent. Christine Carrillo, Norma Cavazos, Elizabeth Limon, Juan Mancha, Ricardo Moreno, Elaine Ortiz have all completed the required continuing education. Level 5, additional continuing education requirements. Christine Carrillo, Norma Cavazos, Elizabeth Limon, Ricardo Moreno, all have completed the required continuing education. Juan Mancha, Elaine Ortiz have yet to complete the required continuing education on level 5. Level 6, evaluating student academic performance and setting goals. Christine Carrillo, Norma Cavazos, Elizabeth Limon, Juan Mancha, Ricardo Moreno, Elaine Ortiz have completed the required continuing education. Level 7, identifying and reporting abuse, trafficking, and other maltreatment of children. Christine Carrillo, Norma Cavazos, Elizabeth Limon, Ricardo Moreno, all have completed the required continuing education. Juan Mancha, Elaine Ortiz have yet to complete the required continuing education. Board members exceeding required continuing education, Christine Carrillo, Norma Cavazos, Elizabeth Limon, Ricardo Moreno. Board members deficient in required continuing education, Juan Mancha and Elaine Ortiz. And I do know that they are going to do their best to get these taken care of as soon as possible. Thank you on that. I appreciate you all taking care of those. Agenda item 7C, consider and take possible action regarding approval of the proposed board resolution establishing the proposed incentive for early notice of resignation. You had a pending motion, Mr. Moreno, if I recall.
Yes, I do. I mean, I know it's listed on convening closed session, so are we supposed to go with it first and then come back?
We put an item in closed session just in case anybody had a legal question. And if you did, we could just wait. But if you don't, you're ready to take action. Yeah, it's a pretty straightforward, but sometimes just to be safe, we just wanted to make sure in case y'all have any questions.
Well, if that's the case now, I'll go ahead and move to approve the proposed board resolution establishing the proposed.
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
But if we have a question behind closed doors, should we discuss that before we move forward? I mean.
Right, that's why I was asking if y'all have a legal question, we can wait.
So is there a motion to move?
Motion to approve and discuss, or motion to discuss? Motion
To move to closed session?
Motion to move to closed session.
Correct, sir?
Or do we want to do it all at once?
Well, hold on, Ms. Ortiz, do you have a legal question to go to close? Okay, so then yes, I recommend we not take action and then just include this with our closed session and come back out. Yep. Yeah, thank you.
Do we have to do a motion to move it to closed session, Mr. Lucinda?
No, you have,
Okay.
you have an item in there.
Okay. So we are going to move to item 8, correct? convene in closed session as authorized by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Sections 551.071 through 551.084. Is there a motion to convene in closed session?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Carrillo.
I move for us to convene, I move to approve for us to convene in closed session as authorized by the Texas Government Code, Chapter 551, Sections 551.071 through 551.084. These are for items A, B, C, D, and E.
Thank you, Ms. Carrillo. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mancha. I will go ahead and take the
Madam
vote.
Chair?
Yes, ma'am.
I'm gonna add, item C. No, we're gonna add, item 7C into closed session. Or do we have to announce it or not?
It's already covered.
Okay, yes,
Oh, this is.
yes. So I will take the vote to convene in closed session. Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Ms. Carrillo, yes, sir, yay or nay? Yay. Ms. Limon, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
And myself, yay. So we are going to convene in closed session. It is 7:38.
You have the gavel.
I know, I'm intimidated by that. As a matter of fact, I was thinking, can we sit out of the way?
I'm like, should I have a notebook?
No, I didn't. It's like my first.
Oh, just to get it, yeah. in Christmas drop.
It's about, it's really fluctuating. There you go. Yep.
When I said fabulous voice, that's Oscar.
We are back in open session. It is now 8:41. Agenda item 8A, discuss and take appropriate action on the recommended regular personnel report, TGC 551.074, no action taken. Agenda item 8B, the board will review and discuss the 2021-2022 school year professional probationary contracts, professional term contracts, and professional non-certified contracts. No action. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Yes, sir.
I move to approve the 2021-2022 admin probationary term and non-certified contracts.
And that is agenda item 8C, Mr. Moreno?
Yes, ma'am, that is correct.
Thank you. Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Ms. Limon. I'm going to take the vote. Ms. Limon, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Mrs. Carrillo, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, and myself, yay. Agenda item 8C passes. Agenda item 8D. Do we have a motion?
Madam Chair,
Yes, Ms. Ortiz.
I move that the board accept the superintendent's recommendation for Director of Student Support Services and Special Programs, Reina Gallegos.
Is there a second on Ms. Ortiz's motion?
Second.
Thank you, Mr. Mancha. I will take the vote. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Ms. Limon, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you, ma'am. Mrs. Carrillo, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you. Myself, yay. So agenda item 8D passes. Agenda item,
Madam Chair,
yes, sir.
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Thank you.
I move to approve the board resolution establishing the proposed incentive for early notice of resignation.
Thank you, Mr. Moreno. I will second that motion. I will take the vote. Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you. Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, ma'am. Ms. Limon, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you. Mrs. Carrillo, yay or nay? Yay. Thank you, ma'am. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Thank you, sir. And myself, yay. Agenda item 8E passes. Yes, ma'am. Yes, Ms.
I move to adjourn.
Is there a second? I'll second. Thank you, Ms. Ortiz and Ms. Limon. I will take the vote to adjourn tonight's meeting. Mrs. Carrillo, yay or nay?
Yay.
Ms. Limon, yay or nay? Yay. Mr. Moreno, yay or nay?
Yay.
Ms. Ortiz, yay or nay?
Yay.
Mr. Mancha, yay or nay?
Yay.
And myself, yay. It is now 8:45 and tonight's meeting has been adjourned. Thank you for joining us. Everybody be safe and we'll see you soon. Oh my Lord, I gotta be done. Yeah, I have to